Hi, my name is Delician, and this video covers the Diablo 4 dev chat and PTR build discussion that they had on YouTube and Twitch. One of the first things that they said, and they also said this in the video, was that they appreciated all the feedback that the players provided on the PTR for Season 4. Now, what we're covering first, are some of the highlighted bug fixes and feedback adjustments that were mentioned. Now, this is a fairly long post that they did, so I'm not going to go over everything, but there will be a link to this full post if you'd like to review it yourself down in the description below. But some of the biggest stuff that they did was they removed the chance for masterworking to fail. Now, I had that happen to me a lot when I was playing on the PTR, and I think that's a good thing. Masterworking shouldn't fail. If you're having to go through all the effort to get those mats and to kill the boss and such, there shouldn't be a chance for it to fail. They also removed the animation for non-milestone ranks. That's ranks 1 through 3, 5 to 7, and so forth. And I think that's a good thing also. They want you to go ahead and be able to blast through, and there's still an option if you want to skip that one milestone, you can skip it as well. Also, what I think is another good thing is that the tempering result screen will now show result affixes, its role, and the range. That's a huge plus to me, because then you'll be able to see exactly what you're getting after you temper it, and that will help a lot with planning and organization and such. Another really good one is that you can search for the term equip or equipped within the Codex of Power, and you get a list of all your currently equipped affixes. I can't tell you how many times I put in an affix on a piece of gear that I already did. So this, me personally, is a huge quality of life update. Also, they've added an inventory icon for items that indicate at least one greater affix. And they also have the same icon on the display screen for that affix as well. So you'll be able to tell at a glance that this item has a greater affix or not, which will help for going through and just determining what loot you want to keep and getting rid of the loot you don't want. Some of the other adjustments that they made was that they found that while you were going through the pit with a party, that only the person who opened the pit would be getting any of the rune shards. They went ahead and changed it so that whoever opens the pit will get 100% of the masterworking materials, and the rest of the party will only get half the amount, which I think is fair. If you're helping somebody go through, you should get a little something for your reward. Also, that the Hellborn spawn chance in the Helltide zones has been increased, which I also think is a good thing. When you go to the Helltide zones, it should really feel like you're stepping into another world. You should be blasting through mobs. It should be fun, and that does. They've also increased the overall loot quality, and also the Doomslayer variants that used to just drop a test of Doomslaying on defeat will now drop the contents of it with no additional cinder cost. There was also some times when you would find a Doomslayer, you would have to have the 50 cinders on you at the time in order to open that chest. They went ahead and removed that, and now when you open up the chest, you get the results. And I think that's another good positive thing. Also, they found that many of the tempering affixes were overperforming or underperforming, and they also fixed a very interesting bug. When a lot of the Dust Devils and Bone Spirits, when they would be used, and I'll have a little video clip that they showed from the PTR later, from the dev chat later on, they kind of filled the screen. It was it made things difficult, especially if, let's say, you had more than one character that could do that. So they went ahead and capped the maximum size for 100% and also capped the number of them as well. The damage is still the same, as you will see on the PTR test, the video screen, but they reduced the number to make the game a little more easier and a little less computer threatening. I were a couple of times that I thought my computer was going to have a heart attack when I was trying to go through that. They also did some changes to itemization. One of the things is now when you extract an aspect, it automatically upgrades to the Code of Power, which I think is a wonderful thing. As I mentioned in my video, that was one of the biggest quality of life changes that came out of this patch. Also, various item affixes have been updated, and the overall pool of affixes has been condensed, so that it'll make it easier for you to determine what items you want and what items you don't want. The new tempering and masterworking systems allow for deeper customization. Legendary items that drops from enemies that are greater than level 95 are now always 925 item power. So that way you're not having to, because there were times during the earlier seasons that I would drop from high level mobs, I would get 6, 7, 800, low 900 item power items. Now it's always item power 925. So you're more just making a choice as to what you want on the build as compared to the quality of the item. So it makes going through the items a lot easier. Also, unique items can now drop earlier in the game. World Tier 3 starts in World Tier 3 uniques now drop as non sacred in World Tier 1 and 2, and World Tier 4 unique items now drop as sacred in World Tier 3. And Uber uniques can start dropping for level 55 monsters, and all Uber uniques are item level 925, which makes it great. That was huge because there were times I would get an Uber unique, and it would be an Uber unique that would be of a lower power level of one I got earlier, and I thought, what a waste. So I thought that was good. Now, one of the other things they did was they changed the minimum levels required to equip those items. All sacred items now have a minimum level of 35, and all ancestral items have a minimum level of 55, which they've also made for World Tier 3 and 4. And I think that's a good thing. If you're getting up to those tiers, you really need to be at about that level. So I really think that's a good call on the devs' part. Now, the bulk of the changes that are on the patch notes concern game updates. And there were a lot of them, and a lot of the classes got changed. Aspects got changed, Paragon gifts got changed, powers got changed, and there's way, way too much. I would spend an hour just going over them all. So I will have a link, as I mentioned, to the video down below so that you can go ahead and go through. But there's a few of them that I do want to highlight in detail. One of them is the threats that they made to Hell Tides. As you battle through the Hell Tides, you'll generate threats, kind of like from the old GTA series, the stars that would show up. There are 3 health threat tiers that will increase the damage and frequency of ambushes, and at level 3, you become hellmarked. Achieving maximum threat will initiate a brief ambush frenzy of maximum enemy density. What a word. Which I think is a good thing. That's kind of what the Hell Tides are supposed to be. They're supposed to be this huge outpouring of monsters. These hell mouths are supposed to spawn, and you're supposed to just get covered with them. And it should be a kill or be killed type thing. And then also there will be an immensely powerful agent of hell, the resurrected from the tortured souls of Sanctuary's most powerful champions. And there are 5 variants representing the highest tiers of each class in Diablo 4. I think that's good. There were a couple of them that I thought during the PTR that I had a problem with, and I had a fairly good character. My level 100 character was fairly maxed, and I'd gone through the pit several times. And they still gave me problems. So I'm hoping that they keep them that way. Because, frankly, when you get up to this Helltide level, they should be a problem. You shouldn't be cakewalking through this. They should be challenges. So I think that's a good thing. Also, the accursed ritual, the baneful hearts, now primarily earned through opening tortured gift chests and can be used at the ancestral ritual location. You can also get them from the Hellborn demons and the Doomslayers, which are some of those higher level mobs that you'll find. Now, you'll need 3, as I mentioned before, you'll need 3 baneful hearts to activate the ritual, and you will be swarmed with a dense demonic ambush. Other players in your zone will be alerted that the ritual has begun if they wish to join you, and you will probably want their help. This ambush will climax at the arrival of the Blood Maiden, an immensely powerful demonic creature who will offer great reward upon her death. Now, this is the sort of thing that I was looking forward to. It sort of reminds me of the Blood Harvest from Season 2. Those altars that you found where you'd have to sacrifice goods and then you'd get swarmed of mobs, those were so much fun. I think this is going to be a very good adjustment to it. Also, I like the fact that World Tier 1 and 2 is now getting a Helltide, so if you wish to either do the seasonal story or just skip the seasonal story and just power level your character, you can do it in the Helltides, and I think that's a good thing. All the tortured gifts in World Tier 1 and 2 are now mystery chests. There are no roaming bosses, and the monster density has been adjusted to match the expected difficulty as 3 or 4. So you can prepare to what you'll find, and it'll help get your build a little more tweaked and tuned, ready for those higher level tiers when you get there. Now we're covering some of the aspects that are character related. And like I said, I only want to touch on a few here because, again, these notes are massive. One of the ones that they did was the aspect of the fierce winds, which your shout skills will now create only 3 dust devils that deal damage to their enemies along the path. And your dust devils are now only 5 to 20% bigger and deal 1% increased damage for each of their size. I think that's a good thing. One of the biggest changes that will probably upset your sorcerers out there is the changes they made to the fractured winter glass. Over here on the screen, I have all of the changes that are up here. But casting Frozen Orb now has a 35 to 50% chance to spawn a random conjuration. Your on lucky hit, your conjurations now have a 50 to 70 instead of 70 to 100% chance to launch a Frozen Orb. And here's the big thing. The developers note the extra explosions from the aspect of Frozen Orb do not trigger this effect, as the unique calls out casting. This was an unattended interaction that was fixed since the PTR. I played a Frozen Orb Sorcerer for a little while because I wanted to try this out when I picked up my Fractured Winter Glass, and it was busted. I think that while this is going to definitely cut down the overkill on the build, I think it's a good thing. You've got to maintain game balance, and I think this is one of those things that they did. Another one they did to the Sorcerer was the Flame Reaver unique gov. It now splits into 3 fire bolts, but the damage has been buffed. And it's been buffed a lot, from 30 to 70%. So I think having it 3 instead of 4 is good. You're not having to scroll around as much, more directed. So I think that's also a good update that they did in this patch. Another major change they made concerned armor. This is what they listed for Season 3. Physical damage mitigation, it has a cap of 85%. The amount of armor you need to be at that cap is based upon the level of the monsters that you're fighting. And they gave some examples before. So they never know when you're done with armor, so it's always an upward battle. You would always need more armor, more armor, more armor, and they really want you to more worry about your stats and other skills than your armor. So what they're going to head and do for Season 4 is it's not going to be right away, but they're going to go ahead and show you what your what reduces physical damage taken at, so that you can stay at right around that 85%, so that you know, okay, I don't need to worry about armor anymore. I need to more focus on the abilities, and I think that's a good thing. If they cap the armor to, I think it's around 9,000 ish for level 100 or for level high level monsters, it takes that off the table a bit, so you can more focus on your abilities and what you need to do, your skills, instead of trying to find more armor, and then you have to make this choice: do I need more armor to counter the physical abilities, or do I want to give up some of my skills? So I think that's a good thing for determining what you need to do for your characters as well. And to go along with the armor, they've done things like they've changed damage reduction granted by Fortify has been increased. Cooldown reduction is now capped. Physical damage calculation against damage reduction now caps at level 100. The maximum number of evade charges has been increased. Attacks reduce evade's cooldown affix has been increased. That evade grants movement speed has been increased. Here's a big one. All resistances from amulets have been increased from 19 to 25%. That'll make it easier to hit resistance caps as you go up in scale as well. And single element resistance on rings has been increased from 8 to 10%. So if you're looking to just fill in that one little gap, it'll be easier to do that. Another thing that they're changing is the amount of loot that drops. Now, as I mentioned in my earlier video, they were going to be cutting down the number of loot drops so that you're more focused on killing monsters than you're spending time in town. This is some of the updates that they're doing. I think these are also very good changes. All items dropped in World Tier 3 will now be Sacred. All items dropped in World Tier 4 will now be Ancestral. That is huge, because I used to get Sacred items in World Tier 4, and I would look at it and say, why am I getting this item? Also, the rarity drop chance has been adjusted. After level 28, the vast majority, about 80% of gear drop that is not legendary, will be rare. Additionally, chances to drop legendary item now scales more after reaching level 50, and item power now increases every 5 levels after 50 instead of on a linear scale. That's also good, because you should be more worried about not necessarily the item power, but what it does to your stats and skills and abilities, and this will help that a lot. Another big one is for those traversal abilities such as leap and teleport. They can now easily travel to the edge of the screen, which will improve parity with mouse and keyboard players. One of my favorite builds was using the Oculus, which makes your evade a teleport. Now you will definitely flitter around the screen a lot more, and the distance will be a lot more reliable. But they did put a note here: those with ultra wide monitors, you may not be able to traverse to the edge of your monitor, as they have a set maximum distance they can travel to. Now, I think this is good. Also, between that and then the increasing the number of evade charges, I think is going to help rogues and teleport sorcerers to be able to do more evades and move around the map better. So I think that's a good thing. Now, here's one I definitely want to highlight. Mounts can now be spurred in town, and the local PTA has been commissioned the town crier to implement scrolls of speeding to no avail. They got to have a little bit of fun on the patch notes. But this will be good. This will allow you to actually go through town a little bit faster, because there'd be times I would be traversing the overworld trying to get to a world boss or trying to get to a Legion event, and taking the direct path would take me through a town. And this way I can keep spurring through the town and keep going through if all I'm doing is passing through. So I think this is good. And I wanted to highlight it even though they didn't. And again, there are far more changes that I have the time to cover. I really recommend that you spend the time with the character classes you plan to play and go through them and see the changes that are coming in season 4. Also, there's not really going to be any seasonal powers outside of the Iron Wolves quests that you do for season 4, because they really wanted to focus on just getting the powers and making all these changes good. So going forward, there will be more seasonal powers. So I also think it's a good thing, because then they'll have time to hone, they'll have time to make changes, because let's be honest, any sort of in-house testing that you do on these things, you're only going to catch so much. It's when the players actually get in there and try to break them, and you will. That's when they'll see the real changes that need to be made, and they'll be able to fix things and get things going. Also, another thing they mentioned is the profane mind cage, that buff that you would get to increase Helltide mobs to 10 levels higher than what they are. One of the things that they did mention is that if you already have it in effect, it will reset the time. It will not extend the time, which I also think is a good thing. But overall, I think these changes are good. I am really looking forward to season 4. Whether you play on the Eternal Realm or the Seasonal Realm, these changes are definitely going to make the game much better to play, and I'm looking forward to it. Now, I will be streaming season 4, probably not right at launch. As usual, I'm fully expecting Diablo to have some issues like they did last time, getting the servers up. But I will be streaming that later in that day, and I'll be streaming a lot of season 4 going forward. So you will find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Talesian, and I look forward to seeing you there. Have a good day.